Right, so we're at Brighton Music Conference and we're going to be on a panel tomorrow talking about diversity in music and how we can promote it. So we just wanted to have a quick discussion. Why is diversity even a topic right now and what can we do to solve it? In terms of getting more women into music, we need to ask, why are there not that many women in music anyway? And I think it comes down to very early stages of the way that gender stereotypes are sort of created, that men might be positioned to do one thing and women might be positioned to do another thing. And we almost need to go and reevaluate the way that these stereotypes are created.
I think a good place to start would be to identify where it is those stereotypes actually start getting put into place. I mean, from what age is there a separation between this is a boy's role, this is what a boy does, and this is what a girl should do? Let's start having a look at where that begins, and then we can start tackling the problem that happens further later on down the line.
It almost comes down to a little bit about the way big brands might even be positioning like DJs. A lot of the companies, whether it's Pioneer or Ableton, we need to look at some of the ways that they position some of their ambassadors, and maybe they need to think about having a more diverse base of ambassadors in a sense, so that people who might be from an ethnic background or just women, for example, actually feel inspired to follow some of these leaders. Whereas I think at the moment there's such an imbalance, and the kind of leaders, the leading brands almost play into this, maybe unknowingly most of the time.
I think also when talking about diversity, there's also a number of other sectors of society that we need to be thinking about. I mean, if we look at some of the top clubs in London right now, how many are wheelchair friendly? I think that's a big point that needs to be made, where if we want to start diversifying the music industry, let's start looking at how we can make it more accessible from a physical perspective as well.
No, that's really true. I mean, when we created the Giant 303 as an example, we noticed how many girls wanted to play on that device, but we also noticed that it, just because of the way it was designed, and with these really big buttons, people who might have certain disabilities, for example, for them it was a bit more accessible. And I think you're completely right. We need to reimagine again the way that we design our experiences, the way we design our products, so that they're a bit more accessible for people who might not ever have had the chance to experience music. I think that's a big one.
I think inspiration through music and the accessibility of those type of devices is core to getting people to the industry. It doesn't begin with someone saying, I want to suddenly become the next top DJ, because most of the time they don't see the pathway to become the next top DJ. So it has to start somewhere, and it mainly starts with that moment of inspiration, that moment of passion that begins. And I think the Giant 33 is a great way to kind of encapsulate exactly where that moment begins. And let's start thinking about, I think this is what we do as a company, is where do we start applying that sort of strategic thinking and those moments of inspiration into our campaigns, because that's the real value and that's where the real longevity will lie.
So there's clearly two aspects here. On the starting point, there's an underlying societal factor about gender stereotypes and how those feed into the problem of diversity and why we might not have as many women in music, for example. And then on the other side, there's an element of redesigning our experiences so that we can actually create a more diverse industry where people feel inspired and feel engaged to want to be part of it. But on the complete flip side, we've got examples like the Smirnoff Sound Collective, where they've almost set a quota to get more women as headliners for festivals. And I think it's a great initiative. But we speak to a lot of people in the industry who also, they think it's a great initiative, but they also have issues with this quota type approach. And it's just an interesting one. What are your thoughts on the idea of having quotas?
Yeah, I think the moment you begin to put quotas on certain criteria of maybe getting more women into the industry, I think that's not the best way to go about it sometimes, because you do end up alienating a whole bunch of other DJs who are working just as hard just to meet that quota. I don't think that's the best way to go about it. It is very much two or three steps before that needs to be tackled, because that's not the core of the issue. The issue lies from the education from an early stage and where those gender stereotypes are actually made, as we were discussing before. But it's an interesting one. Even when we're going down to Brighton Festival today, when we're walking around and experiencing the actual festival itself, we see very little women, and there's all these amazing brands there, amazing equipment where you can play and interact with it, but why isn't there more women there? That is a big question.
And I think, diversity, as we know, it's such a broad topic. There is obviously the idea of gender, of sexuality, age, but then, like we were talking about earlier, disability is also a key part, and it's something that gets ignored a lot. But we're really passionate about making sure that young people are represented in music, and I think we also need to consider how we involve more young people and actually create a more diverse music industry from all those angles. Getting more women into music, getting more young people to experience music and to share their thoughts, and also creating the experiences so that people who might have a disability can also experience what the beauty of music in essence.
Look forward to catching up next time, guys. Take care. Bye. Cheers.